kind of sitting with my legs all nice like that. Just take my word for it. I do have legs, I promise. They're down here. Cars come in many different makes and models. Make and model names tend to be specific branded terms, like the Ford Mondeo or the Aston Martin DB9. There is, however, a collection of generic, unbranded names we use to describe cars too, that being the names for car body types. Cars get different names depending on the shape of them and other things like the amount of doors they have, or the type of roof they have too. These are probably terms you've heard of before, and maybe realised, like myself, that some of these names are pretty odd, especially if you know nothing about cars like myself. I learned to pass the drive like less than a year ago. Cars, very alien concept to me, but we'll manage. So why don't we look into what these car body type names really mean, and where those names actually came from. Let's kick things off with the hatchback. These are relatively smaller cars and a pretty standard fare. You may have a hatchback yourself, but never quite knew why your car was referred to as such. Well, it seems that the defining feature of a hatchback is all to do with, well, the back of it. Many other cars traditionally have a separate compartment at the back for storing things in. We call this a boot here in British English, but you may know it as a trunk, whatever works best for you really. With hatchbacks, however, that is not the case at all. Instead of a separate compartment, they instead have what amounts to a large door at the back which opens upwards, giving people access to storage in the back, as well as access to the rest of the car in most cases too. This is why many hatchbacks are referred to as having 5 doors, the 4 you actually get in and the boot door, which is rarely used by people, though I imagine like dogs often go in there, from personal experience anyway. This is why cars of this body type are known as hatchbacks. Hatch is a term for a door of a vehicle, and this kind of vehicle in particular has a hatch on the back, hence why it's a hatchback. Next we have a coupe, or is it pronounced coupe? Cooper? Like a Mini Cooper? I don't know, but these are cars that often value style over actual substance. They are sleeker in their look, tending to be lower to the ground, and often having a much more sloping roof. It's from this lower look as to why they're called coupes. If you couldn't tell from my lack of knowledge in how to pronounce this name, coupe comes from French and their word of couper, meaning to cut. They have this name not because they actually cut up to make them lower, but because they're designed to look lower to the ground, and their lower roofs often make them look like a part of them has been cut out almost, but probably don't actually cut up someone's car. That probably wouldn't go down too well. But before we continue, I need to say a huge thank you to my most recent patrons. So if you weren't aware, I recently, a few weeks back now, did a video promoting my Patreon and talking about how I wanted Name Explained to fundamentally change the way it's financially supported. If you haven't watched that video yet, please go do it. Clearly a lot of you have, because there's been so many amazing people who've decided to part with their hard-earned cash to help support the channel, and that's amazing. Thank you all so much. So since at the time of recording, this video is actually being recorded a couple of weeks in advance, so if you've got a patron recently and I didn't mention you here, sorry about that. You'll be mentioned next time, I promise. But huge thank you to Rafe Zero Humour Singer, Patrick Ferguson, Francis Backer, Chris Scruggs, Rolf Pizzette Pock, Magnus Hartigan, Russ Erb, Mira Maven, Troy Jeffcoat, David Bayless, Joan Pedro Francis, Nick Landerville, James Lee, Jed Worthen, Illumis Poulis, Stellan, and I need to also say thank you to one extra name, that being Steffi Leach. I mentioned you in the last video, but I got your name a little bit wrong, so I wanted to say thank you again so much. Seriously, this is completely unscripted, this bit. Thank you all so much for becoming patrons. This is the most successful my Patreon has ever been. It's kind of ebbed and flowed throughout the years. At the time of recording, we're actually quite close to my big goal of $1,000 a month on Patreon, which we've never actually been this close to it. So if you do want to help support, please do consider going on Patreon, because it will be amazing. And I've always said to myself, when we hit $1,000 a month, I'm going to do one of my most requested videos ever, a huge big video talking about how every state of the USA got their name as well as their nickname. So if you want to see that video, please do consider supporting on Patreon. Honestly, it's been amazing. It's been a real wild few weeks since I made that video, just seeing how many people love Name Explained enough to want to support in that way. Thank you all so much. Thank you. And in that last video, I got so caught up on thanking all my new patrons, I forgot to thank all the new Super Thanks leavers. So Super Thanks are a thing you can leave directly here on YouTube. They are a great way to make a one-time donation to help support the channel. If you don't want to commit to a monthly donation, they are amazing as well. So thank you to everyone who left super thanks on that video. I didn't even mention super thanks in that video, but you guys still did it anyway. Thank you so much. So huge thank to one, Ryan Webb 3222, 38 Jozu 91, Zera Nemo 74, J Kaufman 9782, 1990 JAF, Boom Chocolaka, CDRW 1024, Def Toms, Nicky Monty, Tiki 7315, A Pink 176, Pinword, and Mark Abram 7064. Thank you guys all so much for leaving super thanks. Patreon, super thanks, they all help out amazingly, and I think you guys definitely deserve a mention here in these videos, because what you do to help the support Name Explain is incredible. This is completely unscripted. I'm going back into scripted territory now, so this doesn't become a huge rambling mess. Let's carry on. Why don't we carry on with the next car body type I want to cover, the sedan. Sedans are often defined by just how much more space they have in them, often having ample room for the engine, the passengers, and the boot too. They are often somewhat fancier looking cars too, but not as low to the ground or sleek like a coupe. The fanciness of sedans is reflected in their name too, as a sedan was initially a completely different type of vehicle. The word was first applied to those enclosed boxes that important people get carried around in by other people. Imagine a portaloo with sticks coming out the bottom of it, and you should have a good idea as to what I'm talking about. Only the most important people could have been transported like this, and now sedan cars are seen as the kind of cars used by important people too. The word sedan unto itself, it seemingly comes from the Latin sedere, which means to sit, which makes sense. There's those fancy sort of original sedans you kind of just sat on like this. You can't see, but I'm kind of sitting with my legs all nice like that. Just take my word for it. I do have legs, I promise. They're down here. Though, if you're British like me, you might be confused. This is because in British English, these cars are instead called saloons. This might seem odd to American English speakers, as in the States, the word is more linked with bars and taverns cowboys would go to, though both uses of the word are linked, as it comes from the Old French salon, which means large room. Saloon bars in the Old West tend to be large rooms, and saloon cars seem to be pretty roomy too. The next car body type has a pretty easy to understand name, the convertible. These are cars that have roofs that can come off and you can drive along with the wind in your hair. You know what, I've never driven in a convertible, and I always remember as a kid, that was my dream, to drive around in a convertible. I was such a innocent child, clearly. If you have a convertible and want to give me a lift somewhere, that would be amazing, let me know. Of course, they're called convertibles due to the simple fact that their roofs can be converted from open to close. Simple enough. Though these kind of cars do have a more interesting name too, that being the name of cabriolet. This, like sedan, has its root in an older vehicle too. An OG cabriolet was a kind of horse-drawn carriage which required one horse and was on just two wheels. They also had a pretty open design too, so it makes sense why these open-top cars borrowed this name from them. The name comes from the word cabriole, which was a kind of light, bouncy ballet move. The carriages were named after this ballet move, as they too were kind of light and bouncy when you transported them. Imagine being on a little horse and just bouncing around. That'd be nice. I'd love to be bouncing around on a little horse right now. But no, I'm just here in my room making content, apparently. Weird life. If I was born a few hundred years ago, maybe I would be bouncing around on a horse, but instead, I'm just contenting. And finally, we have the SUV. These are much bigger cars, built with the intention of doing all kinds of activities in them, like driving up mountains or through marshlands. Nowadays, you find them being more to cart kids and dogs around in, I feel like. The amount of people have massive cars just full of children and dogs. You do you, man. You do you. But anyway, before making this video, I'd heard the term SUV, but I never actually knew what it stood for. Well, it simply stands for Sport Utility Vehicle, which is easy enough to understand, I suppose. What kind of body does your car have, if you even have a car at all? And there's no harm in not having a car. Cars are a massive faff, as I've learned. As I mentioned, I've recently passed. They're a huge faff. Like, if you don't have a car, that's fine. I envy you. I would love to not have to worry about a car, but here we are. But anyway, let me down in the comments below. And of course, suggest a topic down below which we cover in next Monday's Name Explain video. It could be about literally anything, and the topic can be as niche or broad as you like. I will then choose 3 of those topics and place them in a poll for my patrons to vote on. Then the winner from the poll will be the topic covered in next Monday's Name Explain video. You can vote in that poll, as well as enjoy many other great benefits by visiting patreon.com/nameexplain, which will be linked down below, and by donating just $1 a month. Thank you. Anyway, that's more than enough for myself, but don't forget to go follow on Instagram where NameExplainYT, and don't forget to join the Facebook page Friends of Name Explain, where you can chat with myself and many other name nerds. Okay all, take care. How are we looking? Yep, all good. Hope you're doing well. Sounding good? Let's get on with this, shall we? Well, it seems that the defining feature of a hatchback is hatchback. You know, as a trunk. Whatever works for you. Huge thank to one Ryan Webb 3222, 38 numbers, or sleek like a coupe. The fanciness is type of vehicle. That one really weird at the end. We'll do that again. Bye.